What's up, Fin fans? I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Grease, and the plane has touched down in Spain. The Dolphins in Madrid to take on the Washington Commanders this week. We'll have a full preview here on the Squad Show.
Hey, I'm Zgonina. We're overseas this week for another W, 2 in a row.
Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, and I'm hoping that the plane touching down isn't the only touchdown we get to celebrate this week against Washington.
Phins up! It's the Dolphins Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphins Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Fin fans? The Dolphins looking for their second win in a row for the first time this season, looking to build on the momentum they created with the resounding win over the Buffalo Bills. That's Jeff Zgonina, call him Z, former Miami Dolphin, and of course, Kyle Krabs, your host of Locked On Dolphins podcast. Today's episode of the Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And of course, the Locked On Podcast Network just became the #1 sports podcast network in El Mundo. And we would love to thank you for your part in that, whether you're brand new, whether you're an everydayer, and whether you've been with Kyle Krabs from day one, all of you. We appreciate you for helping us become #1. We're live on YouTube. Then we upload, you download Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, and of course, Roku right here with the show. And today, fellas, we're going to be talking about the Dolphins touching down in Madrid to play the Commanders. Can they make it 2 in a row for the first time this season? Final reactions to the Bills win. Some comments from Mike McDaniel. Another eye-opener from Tua Tagovailoa, a real eye-opener to me. Another comment to the media from him. And then, of course, the Commanders preview. They don't have starting quarterback Jaden Daniels. It'll be Marcus Mariota. So just like the Falcons game, the Dolphins Z get to face another backup QB. And I know the preparations are the same, and you guys always say the right thing, Z. But when you're facing a backup, it's different, especially when the starter is a guy like Daniels. And you can see what a difference it makes to the game plan for the Commanders, who have been running the ball a lot more with Mariota under center than they did with Daniels.
Yes, I mean, again, but this is not like a real backup. I mean, the dude was a first-round draft pick. He might have been first overall to the Titans, I think, right? Or he was up there somewhere. So it's not like it's, some scrub backup guy that we never heard of. The dude can make some plays. He's very athletic back there. He's just like Daniels. He likes to run the ball. Last week he was, 3 out of 4 under pressure for 108 yards. That's pretty good to be moving around that pocket and still slinging that ball downfield. So he's still somebody that, you got a game plan the same as Daniels.
Yeah, and very different, Kyle, and we're going to get to the game preview later, but very different than facing Kirk Cousins against the Falcons in Atlanta when Penix missed that game because of the mobility of Mariota and the ability to make plays outside the pocket.
Yeah, I find more inspiration in how the Dolphins defense played Josh Allen on Sunday than I do anything else, where I was really impressed. Z, I don't know if you subscribe to the school of thought that the least helpful place to be playing defense in the NFL is behind the quarterback, but those pass rushers never got behind the quarterback. They were even. They were very methodical with how they were taking their rush off the edges, and then they would try to collapse the width of the pocket once they got even with the quarterback, and it prevented Josh Allen from consistently getting outside the pocket and breaking contain. So Mariota's a little bit of a different style athlete and runner than Josh Allen is, but that rush plan that I thought they had against Buffalo is one that they should find some inspiration in. And man, like Bradley Chubb played lights out in that football game, and it was even more impressive to go back and watch it on the tape. So he'll have his hands full with Laramie Tunsil this week. Looking forward to that individual matchup, but Mariota, to Z's point, is no slouch player. I mean, you go back to last year, the end of the year when he got a start, and it was some of the best football I think he's played in several years. And you were kind of curious if he was going to get a chance to go out in free agency and what kind of market he would potentially have to be a backup. And he comes back, and sure enough, now he's getting some starting opportunities for the Commanders.
I think teams learned from the Dolphins a little bit last year too, to have a real backup quarterback as opposed to, what the Dolphins ended up with a year ago. And no need to put those guys down anymore, but it really was a disaster not having a guy behind Tua who could actually take over and play well, Z. And like I said, we're going to get to more of the game preview a little bit later. And I know you said you went over there once with the Giants to Europe, Z, when you were coaching. I think it was the Giants, right? And never as a player. But now this is the last time two teams going over this year. The Dolphins and the Commanders, it's the last game over there. Everybody's playing 17 games now. You still get the 8 home, the 8 away. But interestingly, the Dolphins are the first team to arrive a day earlier than most. Most teams get there on Thursday. Mike McDaniel talked about this in his press conference. He said, hey, when you come to a place like this, the players want to see it. It can become a bit of a distraction. So to get here a day early and to have the actual normal day off be a day where they can do that will probably help their mindset. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea too, because when you go over there as a player, you want to see the city because you may never go back, right? You're getting a free trip now, to go see it. My rookie year, we went over actually to Barcelona to play a preseason game against the Niners. And we were out there almost the whole week because I know we practiced against them, because it was like the first preseason game. So you practice against them twice and then you played the game. And, being a rookie, I didn't see much of the city. I went out a few times with some of the veterans, for lunches and stuff in town. But again, everything closes for siesta. So there's nobody out. Stores are closed when we were on the streets. So we didn't see that much. But, I think it's a good idea. Mike took them out there, takes one of the less distractions out of it, for those guys, wanting to get out and see stuff. So maybe the work days, they'll hunker in. Then Friday afternoon, they'll be off to see a little bit more of the city and, get ready for the game.
Kyle, Mike sounds a lot more like Mike. The uhs and the long pauses at the podium seemed. I just watched his press conference from Madrid, and one of the things that was interesting to me that stood out. They get there a day early, and I love the fact that Mike's trolling the Bills fans at the elbow room. I love that in Fort Lauderdale, but on Las Olas and A1A. But Mike's been a busy guy, and you can see a little bit more of a spring in his step. You can hear more in his voice, the confidence, the enthusiasm of a coach who's feeling like his team might be about to start another one of those patented Mike McDaniel Miami Dolphins runs. And I can see it. I can hear it. And I just want to get your thoughts as a guy who bleeds for this team on the head coach, maybe just kind of perking up a little bit more, a little more wind in his sails, and the players kind of following suit.
Yeah, wins cure everything. Right. And especially a win like that was such a statement performance from both sides of the ball. They should feel a little bit better. Now, the challenge and the trap that you have to avoid is to make sure that it doesn't compound into a letdown game against a Washington team that's had just as rough of a season as you've had and is going to be more undermanned than you are in this football game because they're not going to have Jaden Daniels, and Deron Payne got suspended for punching Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Terry McLaurin's not going to go, and Marshawn Lattimore's got injury at corner. Like, those are big time issues for personnel, and Miami has their own fair share of them. But I think coming into this game, Miami has momentum. Miami 2 of the last 3 weeks has played well. And had complete team victories in 2 of the last 3 weeks. So you saw what it looked like on the short turnaround for Baltimore. Does the international travel have an ill effect on everybody in their prep? That's some of the questions that exist still with the Mike McDaniel-led Dolphins is some of those extra layers to games when it's not a 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock kickoff, right? If it's a short week or if it's extra travel or primetime games or whatever. Like the Dolphins historically under Mike have not performed consistently well in a lot of those layers. So I still think there's a letdown element that they need to be guarded against, but they should feel good after a performance like that. And they need to weaponize it in the right way.
Yeah, when the team you just beat, Z, the Buffalo Bills, the head coach has to come out and defend the offensive coordinator and say, no, I'm not going to fire him. I have complete confidence in Brady. Obviously, it's not Tom Brady. You know what I mean? But when you're talking about the Buffalo Bills and coming off a win like that over the Chiefs to just decimate them, beat them in all phases, win the turnover battle, and most importantly, run the football. Being a lineman, when you play like you did against Josh Allen and you play like you did against Cook, holding them to 53 yards. Allen had the pick and the fumble, ended up with a lot of yards, but a lot of that was deceptive because it was late in the game when they were down big. and they came back and scored some points. But when I think about that possibility, you see it on the rundown, 2 in a row for the first time this season. Then you have the bye. You come home for the Saints. You go on the road to the Jets. You could very easily be looking at 6 and 7 at the end of that, but it has to start with this one. And then you get the bye. So putting that out of your mind, putting the travel out of your mind, the fatigue of going overseas, knowing you have the bye, to get that second win in a row, how important is that second in a row for the first time this season for this team right now?
I think it's huge. It's only going to help them, down the stretch. If they get these 2 in a row, like you said, especially overseas and going into the bye, it makes the bye even better. And who knows, maybe Mike throws you an extra day off. Remember, as a player, we knew when that bye weekend was coming up, especially in St. Louis with Coach Martz. If we won that game, we were buyed right after the game. So, we didn't come in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We were off the whole week. So we played a little bit extra harder because he was put that carrot out there for us. And I don't know if Mike does that in this day and age, but back then, we were like gunning for that, that win, right before the bye, because if not, you were there till Wednesday afternoon, and nobody wanted that. Everybody had their planes tickets already in hand in the stadium, ready to go to Bush to get on that flight.
Kyle, just close your eyes for a minute and imagine, envision, meditate with me. Imagine 6 and 7 going into Pittsburgh.
6-7.
There you go, Kyle. There you go.
Right into it.
I could see it, right? And realistically, we've had this conversation earlier this year, and teams look at the Dolphins and say, okay, there's our get-right game. That's a game we should win because the Dolphins haven't played well in the first 2 months of the season. But if I'm the Dolphins and I look at how you played against Atlanta, and if I look at how you played against Buffalo, and I say, if we played that way against the Commanders, who are undermanned, extra week of rest and prep for the Saints, and then the Jets, who you've already beat, they should be favored. I would guess they're going to be betting favorites in all 3 of those games, and they should be. And I think that's part of what's been frustrating at times about this season is they don't have the roster that they did 2-3 years ago, but they also don't have a 1-8, 2-7 roster. I think there's more talent that persists and is available to them, even with Tyreek Hill being down. I think you can make some arguments that the offense has been more consistent and effective without Tyreek Hill because it's not just feeding Tyreek Hill the football 12 times a game for targets. So they should, if they are able to go about their business the right way, be playing for a chance on a primetime showcase against Pittsburgh to get back to 500. And I hope they do that, right? Because I'm always somebody who I don't think you have to lose games to facilitate changes. If you feel like changes need to be made with the Dolphins, I get that, right? And everybody has questions, and we're still kind of working our way through this season. And we saw Miami win 8 out of 9 to close the season and fire the head coach, right? So that to me says if you ultimately decide something's broken, do what you need to do to fix it. It doesn't seem like that's the school of thought that Stephen Ross has with Mike McDaniel. And look, go out and get back to 6 and 7 and then beat the Steelers and finish with a winning record. And if you do that, I think you certainly look at what this offseason was as a youth movement, and it would require several narrative busting wins. And if you get several narrative busting wins, I think that's the best argument that you can make, that you stay the course with the people who are in-house now and you try to build better around it and maybe have some better checks and balances for what the roster and the personnel decisions look like.
And before we hit the break, I want both of you guys just to skip me in the middle, but both of you guys just to respond to this, because one of the biggest reasons they're playing so much better is because Devon Achane is playing as well as any running back in the league right now, running the ball and receiving out of the backfield. And Mike talked about this today, Z. Jalen Waddle truly playing like a number one at wide receiver. And he talked about the intangibles, knowing when to break off routes, being on the same wavelength with the quarterback, not just the physical attributes of a number one, but truly playing in all phases like a number one. So those two guys, a huge reason why 2 in a row seems like such a great possibility right now.
Yes, because again, we talk about it all year. That was Mike's bread and butter, was the run game. And he's got it rolling now. Achane's putting up some crazy numbers, and run the ball hard. The guys are blocking for him. He's hitting the seams. He's getting his reads down and when to break it upfield. And that's only going to help, Waddle in the pass game. And being the number one, everybody's counting on you. You know you're going to get the coverage to you. So you got to know when to break stuff off and everything. When you have like a Tyreek Hill or something, he's just running his routes and then, playing ball after that. Where now he's got to play ball first and then run his route really to see what he's getting and knowing the ball's coming because, Tua's, a timing quarterback.
Yeah, I think Jalen Waddle being elevated into the wide receiver role eventually and already has in some ways made him a better player, right? Where it's like, it doesn't matter what my offseason process looks like, doesn't matter how hard I work, I'm not going to be the primary read in 50% of our progressions, right? It's Tyreek Hill's had a 40+% first read share since he's come to Miami, right? It's an inevitability of what that trickle down effect looks like in the back of your head when hey, I'm going to come out here and run this route and I might get a really good matchup, but is Tua going to go my way first? Probably not, right? So I think the maturation of Waddle in that regard, I think you've seen it with the production on a week-over-week basis, the Cleveland game notwithstanding, which was kind of a disaster class for Miami in plenty of ways. I think he's showing what he's capable of being. I think the run game with the heavy personnel and the 6 offensive linemen is showing you it's a lot of things. When we were having awkward conversations last winter about what was going to happen with Tyreek Hill, when Tyreek Hill said he wanted to leave, and you say, okay, well, what can it look like if they do move on from Tyreek? Because Tyreek told everybody he wanted to leave after the Jets game when he took himself out 3 plays into the second half last year. This was probably a lot of what people had in mind for trying to solve what the offense could look like. And sure enough, they are having success running the ball. They have more explosive plays. Like Waddle's had more explosive plays in the 6 weeks since Hill went out than Hill had in the last 20 games he played as a member of the Dolphins. Like, I don't think that's a coincidence.
It really was a brilliant performance from Waddle, and then Achane tore it up last week. We're going to put our final thoughts together on that Bills win because that could be a season-defining win and a type of win that leads to a run that saves Mike McDaniel's job, whoever the new GM coming in next year, and a lot of things to work with when you talk about Achane and you talk about Waddle and maybe Waller coming back as well. We'll have to see about that. It's your squad show. Our final thoughts on that Bills win, turning the corner into the game against the Commanders in Madrid, and some head-scratching comments again from QB1 Tua Tagovailoa. And you're not going to believe this one if you haven't seen it or heard it. But first, a word from BetterHelp, and then we come back with more of the Squad Show with Z, Kyle. I'm Grease on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, right here, your team every day. There goes Z sticking again. Z doesn't want to leave. He just loves it right up there on that screen. But this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter and the nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. And this season, it's so important to reach out to a check-in with friends, family, even yourself. Just like checking on a teammate or reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while can lift your spirits, reaching out for therapy can make a real difference too. BetterHelp makes that first step easier by connecting you with a licensed therapist online from wherever you are. I've noticed that simply talking things through, even for a few minutes, helps clear my head and get me back on track. And Z and Kyle are so good for my ego. Sometimes I need therapy when I leave the show. Therapy isn't just for when things are falling apart. It's about staying balanced and growing through the tough seasons. BetterHelp matches you with a therapist who fits your needs, and you can switch anytime if it's not the right match. They have over 30,000 therapists. Over 5 million people have used BetterHelp. Finding support really is just a few clicks away. And this month, don't wait to reach out. The holidays are coming. Whether you're checking on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. Listeners get 10% off. Viewers too. We don't want to leave you out of your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn for BetterHelp on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, there we have it, guys. And that really is no joke. Although I will say this, guys, my ego got a boost. I even saw a couple of comments in the chat last week that said, man, I really didn't like this Grease guy, but I got to give him his props because he's getting better every week. So that's because Z and Kyle keep elevating me. That's the real secret here on the show. These guys, we all make each other better. And just by the way, Kyle Krabs is number 1 on the injury list today. This dude is playing with the daycare disease, and I understand that all too well because I have 3 kids and now a grandson, Kyle. And I just told my daughter and her guy the other day, I said, you don't have any idea what you have in store for you. These Martian boogers, these alien diseases that these kids bring home from daycare, one of which you're suffering through right now.
Yeah, this is my flu game, right? So I hope to do MJ proud and put my best foot forward. But my request for, I assume my daycare teacher, my son's daycare teacher is not tuning into the squad show right now. But if you are, please wipe his nose when somebody comes to pick him up. Right? It's always like when you go in the door and everybody's just got like little oogie boogies like running down their face and everybody's running around with him. And it's like, he wants to give me a hug first thing. It's like, well, let me get you tissue first. Like, I don't want you wiping stuff on me while giving hugs. So maybe that was contributing to the cause here for my flu game performance. But we always make time to talk Dolphins football.
And just like an NFL player, Kyle, it always feels better coming off a win, right?
That's right. That's right.
All right, Z. So the Dolphins are in Spain, right? And we're going to preview this game. We're going to talk a little bit more about playing overseas. I'm going to keep scratching my head just because it feels good. But, man, Tua, do not put any more microphones in front of this dude. And as a QB1, I just a head scratcher. And I can't wait to get to that. But this is called a tease. It is a show after all. And the good kind of tease, not the kind you meet on South Beach. You know what I'm saying? But, hey, we digress. I digress. I don't want to throw those guys with me. But the final reactions to the Bills win, guys, thinking back on it, Kyle, I know you watched the film. Z, you were excited about the line play on both sides in the immediate reactionary phase that we had after the game. But as I look back on it, they overcome the 2 interceptions. They shut down Cook completely. And the biggest thing for me, and I talked about it a little bit on the squad show right after the game, Z, is the game plan going into that game. And I know it's a division game. You really know them. You play them twice a year. Had played them tough several times before that. But the Bills were not ready for what the Dolphins threw at them on either side of the ball in the beginning of that game. They didn't recover until the 4th quarter.
No, they didn't. And I was watching some of the press stuff after the game, from after the game in the Bills locker room, and they said they were confused, the first half of the game with some of the looks, especially, our defensive looks that they were getting, and it confused them. And it showed, and like you said, not until the 4th quarter, they could figure out what they needed to do. And I'm sure that halftime for the Bills, it wasn't a lot of coaching. It was a lot of ass chewing probably. So they didn't get their checks in, during halftime, and they had to work through it in the 3rd quarter on the sidelines. The assistants had to do it because I'm sure the head coach was going ballistic, because he was embarrassed about the first half. So it was a good game plan by, the coaches from the Dolphins, and he stuck it to a division team that was leading the division, which is always great.
And Kyle, the one thing that really surprised me about the Bills in that game is how quickly they went away from a guy who's been one of the top running backs in the league, averaging over 5 yards a carry. And Cook, he only ended up with 13 carries in this game. Josh Allen only ran it 4 times. So they literally just gave up on the running game, in my mind, way too early. And Buffalo, if you've been listening and watching some of the stuff up there, and shout out to our friends on Locked On Bills, the #1 show on the network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world, they've been crying all week about the lack of a running game against the Dolphins.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like the narrative that we often talk about with adverse game scripts for the Dolphins, right? It's like, yeah, we got down double-digit points in the first half, and we just totally went away from the run game. So I guess it's a nice reminder that isn't exclusive to Miami at times. But I agree with you where if you want to stay methodical and on schedule, and it felt like Josh Allen went to put the cape on and try to do too much at a few times, and that's where the Dolphins were able to pounce and make some big plays and capitalize on some mistakes from Josh trying to press. And they scored that touchdown there in the 4th quarter and were a 2-point conversion away from it being a 1-score game. So it never really got like it'd be one thing if it was 30-0 or 28-0, right? But like Miami never led by more than 16 throughout the whole first half of the game through the third quarter. So then it got cut to 8, and then it's back up to 15. So it was never more than a 2-score game. I was surprised as well. But I think that's kind of speaks to some of the young guys in the defensive interior that I think are playing better. I think the linebackers and the safeties have a much better feel for fitting. And the confusion that Miami was able to create, man, they had some fun looks in this game. This was a big time Anthony Weaver game for me, as far as you got 7 guys up on the line of scrimmage and we're showing cover 0 and we're going to spin out of it. And it's going to end up being Tampa 2. And the guy who's mugged up on the C gap as a 2-point guy, as a DB, is going to end up running the middle and running with speed at number 3. And they did all kinds of exotics that if they tried to do them earlier in the year, they weren't having the success as far as everybody hitting their landmarks and knowing where to go. And I think some of that's from the personnel standpoint. You got a bunch of new guys all together, and you kind of have to learn on the fly what these guys are capable of. I think they've done an amazing job in unleashing Jordan Brooks the last couple of weeks. He's somehow found another gear to play on. He's playing at a very high level, and he was awesome against Buffalo.
Yeah, he was, and so was Chubb. You mentioned that. Z, you've talked about Zach Sealer, but they did this without Jalen Phillips, who, by the way, had a strip sack in his first game with the Eagles and got a game ball in the locker room. A tough win over a Green Bay team that's not easy to beat on that field. And then, of course, you did it without Chop Robinson, who Mike McDaniel said this morning in his press conference is a full go this week.
Yeah, no, I mean, Chubb really stepped up this week. I think he had 10 pressures for the game or something like that. And going back to Kyle, I thought our whole front, there were no flybys. What do I mean by flybys? Ending your pass rush behind the quarterback,
Yeah.
You always got to counter at the level. And that's always been taught, in every room, as a pass rusher, unless we have some games where, left side will go under, right side will go over the top, blah, 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 blah. But we don't have those people right now to do that. And I thought we had a great plan especially for the up front guys, to keep that dude in the pocket and not let him out.
And Z, I want to keep it with you on this one, because if you had that type of game against Josh Allen, that breeds a lot of confidence. And I know you said Mariota's not necessarily technically completely a backup, but he is no Jaden Daniels, right? And he's definitely no Josh Allen. So you're facing a very similar quarterback this week that you faced last week from the standpoint of their style, not their talent, obviously. But that really has to help, because 2 weeks in a row, you're facing the same type of player for the most part.
Oh, yes. I mean, it helps tremendously. And also because Mariota being the same player sort of as Daniels, the game plan is not going to change. So you can still watch some of that Daniels tape just for the plays, not for the end result, but for what plays they're going to be running against you, because they're not going to change the playbook that much because they're so similar in, abilities, So, that's going to help, and the confidence that you just shut down one of the better passers in the league, MVP guy, it just, makes you feel a little bit better going into this game.
I want to ask you later, Z, how they can avoid a letdown. Kyle talked about it earlier, but first I want to get Kyle's thoughts on the defense as a whole. The Cleveland game, we talked about it, and I was sitting here saying I was getting ripped for this, by the way. But look, one of them was a pick 6. One of them they started inside the 5. Another time, the kickoff return deep. And so 3 times they were defending the Browns inside of the 30-yard line, and it led to scores. And so that score was really lopsided. Then the Ravens game played really well in the first half. Lamar did pick them apart, but he's Lamar, right? But you come back and you beat the Buffalo Bills the way they did. What are your thoughts on the evolution throughout the year of the defense and more guys getting healthy, but also the way that they keep changing their schemes, the way that they keep trying to activate different players? And it kind of makes me wonder what they might try to do with the pass rush with Chop coming back this week.
Yeah, it's a nice reminder that coach and scheme continuity year over year only helps you if you have roster continuity. And the Dolphins, they had their best players on the edge were guys that didn't play last year in the scheme, right? Bradley Chubb didn't play at all. Jalen Phillips played in 3.5 games. They kind of tear up the rest of the defensive interior. They rebuild all that. They brought back Jordan Brooks and obviously Tyrell Dodson, who was a midseason waiver claim, but he wasn't playing behind the guys that were in front of him. So there's a whole integration level there. The entire secondary was brand new, and guys that came in not in March and in April, but came in July and August. So I think that's where, if you're contextually looking at what happened this season and why it happened, I think there's some stories to be told about, all the coaches were back, but they tore up more than 50% of this roster is new. And I think it was needed. I think it was necessary. And we already know that whoever remains here, that the decision maker and running the organization at the top is going to be new because they've parted ways with Chris Greer. And you just have to hope that, there's an emphasis and focus on the right things, which is not a bunch of 1-year veteran, mid to late 30s stopgap players, because that's going to put you in a position. No offense, not everybody's Jeff Zgonina, but when that's half of your starters, right, that automatically means next year half your starters are going to be new players again. And
hey, Kyle, our defense back when I was there, we were all in our 30s. But go ahead, continue your point.
But they were not players that were signed on 1-year deals, were they?
No.
And that's the thing that I think Miami paid the price for in the first half of this season.
Z, what's it like before we hit the break to be the guy who can just go into system after system, year after year, and make it work? Because I got to give you your flowers on that, man. That's not easy for a lot of guys to do. How are you able to pull that off so many times?
Because I was on so many teams, Grease. When you bounce around a lot and you learn a lot of different techniques and defenses, from a 3-4 to a 4-3 to this to that, nose guard, one technique, you get used to it. It's all the same. It's football. You don't make a big deal about it for up front. Now in the back is, it could be a little bit different, but it's still all the same. Cover 2 is cover 2. Cover 0 is cover 0. Again, different terminology. Once you learn the terminology, you're good to go, especially when you're older, because you've seen everything. It's all muscle memory.
I thought you were going to say you went to that prestigious academic institution, Purdue, the Boilermaker in you. No, nothing with that?
No.
All right. Hey, we got to step aside and take another break. And Z played for a lot of teams, coached for a lot more. The insight he brings to this show is tremendous. Kyle Crabb's the best, in my mind, on the channel, breaking down the Dolphins day in and day out. Locked On Dolphins podcast, draft expert as well. Just listening to these guys talk football is a lot of fun for me here on the show. Still to come, the head scratcher right around the corner from Tua, open mouth, insert foot once again. And I can't believe this one's not getting more play, because the way he said he needs to play is the way that he should always play. And I'm wondering why he needs to say that he needs to play that way now. So we'll talk about that on the other side. Plus, Mike had his press conference in Madrid this morning, and we'll talk about that, as well as turning the corner into a preview of the Commanders game. What do Z and Kyle think needs to happen? What are the matchups they're looking at to get a W over in Spain over the Commanders? We'll pick that up right on the other side on the #1 podcast network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There we go. All right. I get a chance to tell you about Supply House. With Kyle on the injured list, I get some extra carries today. I feel like, with Ollie Gordon out and not really running the ball last week, just more Achane, right? So I'll be Achane right now on the spots. So when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today. See parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in business. That's right. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And I'll tell you what, that's important, right? You need parts fast for a project. Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools, 3D schematics, they can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters, just like an NFL game plan, right? Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. So what does that mean for you? Simple. Join the free Trademaster program today. You can score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. All you have to do, visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There we have it. The extra carry is not taking a toll so far, Kyle, but man, I'm glad you're trooping through the show, and we have some more. And I can't find this exact quote, but it was talked about in Mike's press conference today, and I want to make sure I get it right. I'm just going to paraphrase it, but I'm not going to paraphrase the exact words that matter the most in the quote from Tua Tagovailoa, who has really, in my opinion, devolved as a leader, the earlier comments this season about guys not showing up for players-only meetings and just some other comments throughout the year that have left people going, man, he doesn't have the leadership ability to lead a team anymore. But this week he said he needs to play with conviction. And I'm just like, what the hell is that? Like, I need to play with – no kidding. You're the QB1. You should have been playing with conviction all year long. Why is he saying that now, Kyle? Oh, I can't hear you, buddy.
It's me.
There we go.
My mic was muted.
Probably best. I saw your face when you started. Maybe we should.
No. As I think about the quarterback that Tua Tagovailoa is, and I think about how he operates and how he reads and processes the field and how he is as a passer with anticipatory throws and throwing early, right? Like a lot of times Tua is throwing the ball before guys are at the top of the stem, never mind out of the break. I think as they've tried to kind of expand the menu of the passing game, I think that's tested him in some ways. I think as you've been down Tyreek Hill and it's Nick Westbrook-Akine is getting targets more. And, it's not the scheme passes to Malik Washington, but Malik Washington and Taj Washington getting opportunities the last couple weeks. And unfortunately, both those guys fumble for you against Baltimore and set up one short field, and it's another turnover in the red zone. The only guy that he's really got established chemistry with, Darren Waller came in, scored 4 touchdowns in 3 games, and he didn't practice until like October, right? Like a bunch of guys that you haven't got reps with are guys that you're throwing the football to, and that doesn't absolve the need to be better. But as I think about Tua and how he throws the football, I don't think it helps that it's guys you can tell he doesn't have the trust with, that if I throw this ball at the defender's face mask at 15 yards away, you're going to be where you're supposed to be to intersect that ball in stride before the defender catches it and it hits him in the face. So I think that for me, as I reflect on who he is, where he needs to be convicted in throwing the ball, I think the trust with those receivers hasn't been where it's been in some past years. And you can even include Tyreek Hill into that because of what Tyreek Hill did this past offseason. And Tua talked in training camp about how they were the work that they had to do to try to mend their relationship and get back on the same page.
Yeah, and then Tyreek, of course, out for the year. But Z, when you talk, and he said, we have to play with conviction. They're not playing for the head coach's job. But one thing Mike did say in his press conference today in Madrid, and they had a follow-up on it, he said that Tua needs to play as a point guard, not a 2-guard. That's a real clear message to your quarterback, not to try to play like a hero. Be the point guard, distribute the ball, get it to your playmakers where they can make the plays rather than you making the plays. And that's just basically, to me, that's saying, hey, bro, you're not Josh Allen, you're not Patrick Mahomes. Be the point guard, dish the rock, and let them make the plays.
Well, that's what they built around him. They got all these athletes in there, to help him. And he just needs to get the ball to them and get out of the way, basically. That's what Mike was saying. Do what you're supposed to do, get the ball out on rhythm, and let these guys have a chance to make plays. Don't be late on it so they can't make a cut or something or can't catch it in stride, like Kyle was saying, and just let them play. Get out of their way.
Interesting, right? And so I want to ask you what you feel about those comments and the way that Tua has handled the media this year. Someone in the chat room saying, hey, I don't know who should never have a mic in front of them again, Tua or Tyreek, or both of them, right? And another one saying Tua needs a media coach. But what are your thoughts as a teammate and a leader in the locker room when your quarterback seems to be just kind of spinning a little bit with the media all year long and you never know what's going to come out next?
If you're asking me, I don't give a crap, to be honest with you. I mean, I can't worry about that. I mean, he's going to say, especially now, he's been saying stuff all year. He's got a mouth that he likes to run. He's one of those guys. I just let it go, unless he calls me out personally, and then I'll have an issue with it. But if it's justified, it's justified. But again, I can't worry about it. I've said it before on this show. I got to worry about my job and my job only. I can't worry about some Yahoo just shooting his mouth off about whatever he wants to just to be on front of a mic. That's him building his brand. If he wants to build a brand as a sellout, let him build it. I don't care.
With Quinn Ewers launching his brand without even a microphone. But Kyle, your thoughts on Tua? And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. You know much better than me, but I don't remember him being like this at all in the past. Coming out of Alabama, he was a great leader. Obviously takes the job from Jalen Hurts as a freshman when never gave it back up again. And leading a program like Nick Saban's at Alabama is not something that anybody can do to the success levels that they had. Comes in, and a couple of years ago, they give him the franchise money, which is also not easy to do. Had the offense looking great, had a 70-point game, all these weapons around him. What happened to this dude with a microphone in front of him? Because I don't ever remember him being like this before.
Yeah, I certainly think the leadership vacuum that is created when guys like Calais Campbell leave and Teron Armstead leaves and Jalen Ramsey was a vocal leader in many ways. I think those guys leaving and everybody asking, well, who are the leaders on the team now? Does this team have a leadership problem? You're a quarterback that's getting second contract money in the NFL. You're very well compensated. You're a team captain. It should be you, right? And I think for Tua this year's kind of had some hard lessons, and certainly don't feel like he was necessarily malicious at times, but trying to push people's buttons to facilitate like getting the reaction that he feels he needs to get the team to have as a leader. And he crossed some lines in that process. So I think the dynamic of the roster certainly didn't help Tua trying to be the leader that he was trying to be this year, because I don't think he's naturally a very vocal guy. I remember the first couple of years he was here, all the positive feedback. Oh, Tua's a little bit more vocal this year. Oh, he's a little bit more willing to stop guys and tell, this is how I want it. We need to do it this way. Like that was hard for him when he first came in. So he was kind of soft-spoken, quiet, and as he has grown and matured, you got the confidence in working McDaniel's offense and all the production. But then you have the bottom fall out with all the established leaders on the team, and I think he's just tried to step into a role that he's probably not naturally fitting and filling, and it's led to some things he would probably want to take back.
Am I the only one thinking, dude, go talk to Dan Marino? I mean, come on, he's right there. You know what I mean? Go talk to Dan Marino about being a leader. Go talk to him about being a quarterback. And if not, a public service announcement for Tua Tagovailoa right here, courtesy of the Locked On Podcast Network. There you go, Tua. Call them. Call them, bro. I mean, clearly he needs some help, right? And I understand that I'm making fun of the guy, and a lot of people have mental health issues. But when I talk about this with Tua, Z, I'm thinking about a guy who needs to be the leader of this football team with the money that he's making. He needs to back it up with his play. He's been better at executing the offense in recent games, and we've seen the results, still turning the ball over way too much. But when we had two captains on my high school baseball team, and one of them would be like, we're going to go run hills, and the other one would be like, no, we're not. We listened to the other one. Like, it was clear that one of them had our respect and the other one didn't. And Tua reminds me of the one that'd be like, come on, guys, let's go to this. And he was almost trying to force being a leader, and nobody followed him. Nobody follows forced leadership. It has to come naturally, and you're either good at it or you're not, right? So how does Tua become more of a leader for this team, if it's even possible at this point?
Well, first off, I mean, two things you just said, right? Leadership is earned amongst your teammates. It's not about how much money you make or how much playing time you get. I mean, you can make all the money in the world and guys are not going to follow you. I mean, there's guys that get paid a lot of money that people can't stand in the locker room. I'm not saying that's the problem or the issue in Miami. But again, you can't just go, oh, he's a leader because he's making franchise money. That means nothing to a player, really. Okay? It's how you go about your business. It's how you come in the morning. Are you a pro? Or are you just a fake guy because you're getting paid and you think you have to be a leader? Okay, so as we view guys, as a player, I'm talking about my player hat on now, about how you play and how you treat the game and how you respect your teammates. Okay, that's where a leadership becomes. You can't just shoot your mouth off because you got the highest paid in the building. Because I've been on teams way back when where guys were like first pick overall, making all the money, thinking they're a leader, but they ain't putting the work in. Nobody followed them. I didn't, and because I was older too, so I was like, all right, dude, you're not a pro. I don't care what you have to say. You're not the leader of this team. And you got guys who are middle of the road, who do it the right way. Guys follow them, and they're the leaders. I'm not saying everybody getting paid a lot of money is not a leader. I'm not saying that at all. But just know that the money means nothing. That's not a leader if you don't know how to lead men. That's the whole thing, lead men. Not just lead your posse. You got to lead the whole team. And then you people will follow.
Do you have to be a vocal leader at the quarterback position?
No, you don't. You just go out and do your business. You don't have to. I mean, you got to control.
I think of them and they're vocal, but
the only time you truly got to be vocal, you don't have to be a team vocal. But when you get in that huddle, you got to command that huddle. You got to get the other 10 guys to follow you on the play call and the part of the game and all that. But as a locker room guy, you don't have to be the team leader as a quarterback. We all say that, and sometimes it does happen that way. But there's a lot of teams that the quarterback is not the team leader by far. It could be a defensive lineman, a linebacker, it could be a guy in the secondary, it could be an old lineman. I've seen running backs take it over. I've seen wide receivers take it over on offense and the team. So it could be anybody. As long as you have the vision of the team and you care about everybody in the room and your message is what the guys need to hear, not just the message you think they need to hear. It's got to be what they have to hear and be convicted behind it.
I agree with Ulysses in the chat. Jeff Z, great veteran take. You let your play do the talking. We're up against the break. I want to pick this up with Kyle on the other side. That Dan Marino question. I mean, I was being facetious, but I mean, the guy's right there. I mean, I don't know how many conversations they've had or what's been said. Maybe Kyle knows something I don't know, but why in the hell wouldn't you be talking to Dan Marino as much as you can if you're Tua? We have one more break to take. We're going to finish up this line of conversation on the other side, and then we're going to get into the Commanders preview. What does Z think? What does Kyle think needs to happen in this game for the Dolphins to get the win? What are the key matchups they're looking at? You can hit us up in the chat as well as we continue live on YouTube. After the live show, we upload, you download Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on Roku on the #1 podcast network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's Z stuck again. Look at that. That's 4 times I had to hit that button to get him off this time. I think Z's doing something over there. I don't know. He somehow got access to the controls. I don't know what's going on. But the NBA is back. I do know that. How about the Heat scoring tons of points? And how about Norman Powell? Pat Riley pulling another one out of nowhere. And the Clippers end up with Bradley Beal. Oh, my goodness. Pat Riley. Unbelievable. There is no better place to get in on the Heat action or NBA action than FanDuel. You guys see Luka dunk. Nico Harrison got fired. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you missed the start of a game and you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. You guys know I love to get the action on the action stack. That's where it's at with FanDuel. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I don't know if I have to clean my screen. What in the world is going on here? The touch screen. But, man, we have a good show going here today. And I want to pick it right up with you, Kyle, because we only have about 15 minutes left, and you're being such a trooper, being sick today. But the whole Dan Marino with Tua thing, and there's a chance Marino ends up being the guy running football operations, right? Who knows who it's going to be. But I just wonder, when you have a guy like that in the building, you have a guy like that around the franchise all the time, I just wonder I know Dan, I know his style of leadership, extremely fiery, extremely vocal. I mean, I can't imagine him just sitting on his hands and not going down there and A, maybe wringing to his neck, or B, just like, hey, bro, I really need to talk to you. Let's go over some things. Yeah. And I think I know Dan's in the quarterback room quite a bit and he likes to pop in. But every bit of feedback that you hear about players and being effective and coaches and being effective leaders is you have to be yourself, right? Like if you try to be something that you're not, like, and Dan's leadership style, I think it'd be a disaster for Tua. And then the other piece of it, because he's not built that way in general, it ties back to your performance, like Z said, and like the comment said about, if Tua wasn't leading the league in picks right now, like it would be a little easier to kind of fall in line with what he's trying to get guys going. But I think that's part of it too. And when your execution isn't where it needs to be, how are you going to be worried about everybody else? Right. So I think that's part of this. I think
you have to, if you try to be something that you're not, I think that's a first-class ticket to making things worse. And I think that's kind of been what we've seen from Tua at times this year anyway. And yeah, I think this team could certainly use somebody who's a dog like that can give everybody a kick in the pants. I don't know that they have that kind of all-time great player on the roster with that kind of demeanor. And that's what makes those players extra special and have that extra gravitational pull in the locker room and on the field. And I think that's part of Miami as they move forward. You try to find some of those guys, and you got to try to, retain them when you get them, because that's been the other thing is you've had guys that have come in and they've been successes, and then they leave and go elsewhere, and you double down and give the money to the wrong people.
Last thing on this, Z, from me to you, Dan Marino, or a couple of your former teammates have been mentioned. Jason Taylor, who's doing a great job on the D-line at the University of Miami with Bain and Mesidor and company, and Zach Thomas. I mean, Zach was the QB of the defense. Marino's an all-time great quarterback. Even if you have to bring in, everybody has the cap guys anyway, bring in guys to help make the picks. Maybe the personnel is not their strong suit, but everybody's clamoring for true leadership from the top down. It's not going to be a Robert Kraft situation where it comes from the owner. Thank God it's not a Jerry Jones situation, right? But it's not going to come from Stephen Ross, clearly. So someone needs to be put in that position who's going to be the guy who creates the culture. I just want to get your thoughts on Danny. I don't know how well you know him, but I know you know Zach and JT really well.
No, I know all three of them. Of course, I don't know Danny, like really close like I do JT and Zach, but yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. But again, now you're talking about you got to make sure everybody underneath that person has done it before. At least one of them has done it before as a GM role, and they know how to scout talent, because that's the big thing. I mean, it's no different than when my first year in San Francisco, they hired John Lynch as the GM right out of the CBS or Fox, whatever network he was working for, as the commentator. He had no personnel background. He didn't know GM background, but they hired him as a GM. But they set him up with Mayhew, who's a Detroit DC, and Adam Peters, who was a long-time New England and Denver pro personnel guy, So he set him up, so he wouldn't fail, basically, And Kyle's, was in it for a long time, as a coach, and Mike Shanahan. So there was a support system for John to learn what he needed to learn, and I could see if they did something like that here, they would have to have a support staff for whomever the person who's never really came up the ladder, so to speak, in the personnel world.
Kyle, just real quick, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'd be more pro to the idea of something like that if they were to fill the role of what Tony Baselli's filling in Jacksonville, which is not as the GM by title, right? You have your personnel guy, or you have your economics or law degree guy, or whoever. There's kind of a couple different backgrounds that GMs across the league right now have. But to be on that C-suite level and near the top and have hands-on in football operations, but not serve as the actual GM, I think that would be the pathway for success for a JT or a Zach or anybody else. But I'm all in on the idea of, I think this next brain trust that runs football operations, it would greatly benefit them to know the challenges of South Florida and the heritage of this franchise and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I think there's a couple of guys that have gold jackets that would probably have some good insight to give.
Without a doubt.
But also, Grish, you got to understand, like with Zach, you're going to get him off his bike. I mean, he's living a good life right now. Now, yeah. JT's in the grind a little bit, and Danny's in the grind a little bit. But you're talking about not really having weekends or anything in the off season, when you're the GM, especially building up to the draft, because you're in those meetings, you're going to schools, some of these guys got some pretty good lives, and it's hard for them, maybe they don't want to give it up yet,
That's why the guy I see is Danny. I think it's just in his blood, that fire, that competitive spirit, and not to say those other guys don't have it for sure, but maybe JT likes more the coaching side. We don't know. It's all conjecture now. But what isn't conjecture is the Dolphins are a 2.5-point favorite in Madrid this weekend over the Commanders, and it's an early game. It's a 9 o'clock start or 9:30 Eastern, and we'll be here with the show right after. They have a bye right after that, 2 winnable games and 3 out of 4 if you count the Bengals, with the Steelers in between and the Saints and the Jets before that. But a 2.5-point spread for this game. Miami the favorite over a Washington team, Z, that started out pretty good, real high expectations coming into this season. They spent a bunch of money, as Kyle said, brought in guys like Deebo Samuel, coming off the McLaurin and Daniels connection last year. They were 3-2. They've lost 5 games in a row, and they're reeling. They have a lot of guys out too. This is a team that's ripe for the Dolphins to beat and win that second game in a row.
Oh, it sure is. I mean, they got hit with the injury bug like we did, and the suspension with Payne, and so the quarterback's the big one, right? He runs that team, especially on the offensive side. Had that offense playing really well, and now it's like we're favored for the first time, right? And it's like, oh, here we go. Is this a trap game for us? Kind of like last week, So, but I know that I think this coaching staff's going to say, hey, listen, we kind of, we came out of the Atlanta game on a high. We played very well against a good football team, and we beat them. And then we kind of like pitted away against Baltimore. I'm not saying Baltimore was a bad team and all. Lamar came back. I get all that, but still, we should have. I thought we were a little more competitive, and I thought we had a better chance of close game to winning that game late in the game. I thought we had a chance. I thought we should have had a chance. And then we came back last week and beat a really good Bills team, so they say. And so I think this could be a good matchup for us out in Madrid.
And Kyle, I think about this, the matchup I'm looking at the most, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on matchups on the field, but the head coaches know each other really well. Quinn and McDaniel have been on staffs together. Mike talked about Quinn being one of the guys who turned his life around through sobriety years ago. They really know each other well. So obviously knowing each other and what they like to do, their tendencies, Mike being an offensive guy, Quinn being a defensive guy. I'm really intrigued by that chess match this week because Quinn is going to be the one calling the defense this week for the first time he's taking over.
Yeah, that was the big thing for me was Dan Quinn announcing that he was going to take over calling plays defensively. And I think that does kind of set the stage for what should be a really fun chess match of guys that know what to expect from one another. And I think that's where for Miami, as long as the field conditions oblige, I do feel like they have the speed element at enough spots that, maybe Dan pushes some right buttons, but if you can't space and cover the field effectively, it limits what you're able to do. And I think the speed in this game for Miami is the thing that I expect against Washington's defense to be a big needle moving variable in their favor.
And they don't have 2 of their top corners or their best pass rusher. So I have to think like Waddle, you know what I mean? And Malik has been, adding a little bit more and more into the game plan. And the Dulcich, people are excited about him, but the way Tua has been spreading that ball around with those 2 guys out at corner and then their top pass rusher out as well, that's got to be something the Phins are looking at for this week.
Oh yeah, this is on paper, of course. They're 28th defense and we're 27th or something like that. It was like 1 point apart. They're like 17 against the pass. Again, that's for the whole year, so it's kind of getting away from that. We just got to go out there, no matter what. Again, week in and week out, don't turn the ball over. Get your run game going. Get those receivers flying downfield so we can get after them. With our pass rush. Because I think we have a really good chance this week. Really good chance.
Yeah, no Lattimore, no Amos, no Payne. You talked about Kyle, no Armstrong. And this reminds me of the Falcons game. The Falcons had a bunch of injuries on defense. They were light up front. The Dolphins ran all over them. And I'm just thinking Achane has another monster game this week, along with maybe Jalen Waddle too.
Yeah, I think the big variable for the guy that you have to have an answer for, I think, is Frankie Luvu, linebacker for them, who has some really nice kind of diversity as a second-level guy, can pressure from depth. He can line up on the edge. He can play in space. He's a really diverse weapon that you would expect Dan Quinn will push some right buttons and put him in positions to make some plays. So I think that's the player you have to solve if you're Miami, if you want to get this run game going the way that you want it to, because they're pretty lethargic up front, I think would probably be the way I would phrase it. Like they got a lot of big bodies up front, but they're not really like dynamic up front. So Miami has a small-ish offensive line, specifically on the interior with Aaron Brewer and Cole Strange. how much displacement are you going to be able to get on those guys to run downhill? I think this becomes a little bit more of an outside running game attack. And that means you got to create the misdirection to kind of throw Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner off your scent.
Yeah, and they don't have McLaurin on offense either, but the Commanders, I almost said Redskins, the Commanders have only 4 sacks in their last 4 games, Z, and we know Tua under pressure is not the same. And so when he's able to operate and stay clean back there, not being hit, not being sacked, not being rushed, I look for him to maybe have a pick-free game. I said it. He leads the league in interceptions. The guy needs a pick-free game. So as we wrap it here on the show, I want to get your final thoughts, Jeff Zgonina, on the Commanders in Spain this week for the Dolphins. They have the bye after that. 3 out of 4 of those games right after that seem very winnable with a game at Pittsburgh in between. But huge game against a real struggling team right now in the Commanders. Your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think like I said, the Dolphins have a really good chance. The thing that I'm going to keep a really good eye on is the special teams play this week, going against a former Dolphin and Larry Izzo. I think he's a special teams coach, and I think they're third in the league right now in special teams as a whole. So that could be the deciding factor, how we play on special teams. But I think we have a good job shutting them down offensively. Our defense could come out. We're going to have a great plan, shut them down, and I think Tua's going to light it up a little bit. Challenge those young corners out there, and we'll hopefully get some deep balls thrown this week. Again, hopefully no turnovers, and we get at least 2 turnovers and the Dolphin win.
Double duty for Kyle Krabs on the way out. First, your final thoughts on this game, the show, and then what's coming up on the channel this week.
Yeah, I'm excited for this opportunity and again, see how this team responds, right? Where you got a big win. You haven't had a lot of momentum that you've been able to sustain. Go do it this week. So I'm excited for that. As soon as we are done here, I got to go prep for a crossover Thursday recording with David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. So I have to do today's standalone Locked On Dolphins at some point this afternoon, do the crossover on Thursday, and then we'll do kind of our keys to victory against Washington on Friday. Hopefully
this is just a 24-hour daycare disease that you got, man. Thank you for trooping through. Appreciate you always, Kyle. All the great work on the channel. Z as well. Tremendous show again from you. We'll be back on Sunday a little bit earlier than normal with the early kick and Phins up. Maybe they get that second win in a row. It's looking pretty promising for them to get back-to-back wins since the first time. I think it was week 16 and 17 of last season. But 2, 3, and 7 teams appearing to go in opposite directions. Let's see if the Dolphins can get it done. And we have a celebratory post game like we did last week, although I don't think we could top that celebration since it was the Buffalo Bills and they drowned their sorrows at the elbow room with Mike McDaniel driving by and trolling them. That's all there is for the Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network, your team every day. Keep it right here on the channel day in and day out, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube and Roku for more from Kyle Krabs. The other 2 of us will be back on Sunday after the game. Till then, keep your game tight and your mind right. Enjoy Locked On Dolphins on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.